German Chancellor Angela Merkel calls for greater investment in Africa ahead of the G20 summit. Kenya launches an HIV self-testing kit. And Forbes magazine crowns Sean Diddy Combs as the highest-paid entertainer of 2017. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now we'll have those stories shortly. But first, in East Africa, Kenyan rescue services say at least 5 people and possibly more are missing or trapped after a 7-story building collapsed in a residential area of Nairobi. Now, the city's governor, Evans Kidero, has appealed to the building's owner to come forward and provide architectural plans to help rescuers. We get more in this Reuters report from John Highland.
Rescuers on the scene of a building collapse in the Kenyan capital Nairobi were still searching the rubble Tuesday for as many as 15 people reported missing. The 7-story block came down late Monday, shortly after Kenyan authorities ordered all occupants to evacuate, following reports cracks had developed in the structure. A resident of the collapsed building told Reuters the warning signs were there.
This building shows signs of collapsing 1 week ago. We started seeing some huge cracks from below, but it was plastered and we thought the repairs had been successful. But yesterday we discovered huge cracks by the staircase, and by 7 o'clock the building had sunk and people just took off.
Kenyan authorities say a specialised team was called in to help with the rescue efforts. The incident occurring in a residential suburb to the east of the capital, Nairobi. This isn't the first time the country has suffered a similar tragedy. 49 people died last year when a building collapsed after a heavy downpour.
Well, Governor Evans Kidero, speaking of the scene of the collapse, said at least 30 to 40,000 buildings constructed without approval in the Kenyan capital city are at risk. Now, Germany is hosting a meeting with African leaders to discuss the ongoing flow of migrants and refugees to Europe, economic stability, development and security. Chancellor Angela Merkel called the Berlin summit as part of the G20 group of nations. Merkel has sketched out plans for a G20 compact with Africa, which she says moves away from past notions of development aid to look instead at opportunities to partner with African countries, many of which boast booming growth rates. Now, for more on the Germany-Africa summit, reporter Petra Zlatewska joins us live via Skype from the German capital, Berlin. Petra, welcome. And we know that Chancellor Angela Merkel, on a trip to Ethiopia last year, in fact, promised to make Africa a priority for Germany's G20 presidency in 2017. She has obviously kept her promise. Tell us more about our key goals in convening the G20 Africa Summit.
Yes, well, Vincent, this was really Merkel's initiative to put Africa and the continent right at the top of the German presidency's agenda as part of their assuming responsibility pillar for what they want to achieve in this year. And the key goals are really to ensure that there's sustainable measures for private infrastructure, to tap into the renewable energy sector, ensure that the digital economy is going to be able to develop significantly, and also to make sure that there's a new mindset going forward, that it's not just enough to be able to give Africa money and Africa as being an aid recipient, but to make sure that Africa is seen as a legitimate investment destination and that development will take place there hand in hand with peace and security measures.
Now, the Chancellor also launched what she calls the Compact with Africa. How will this change the relationship between Germany or Europe and Africa?
Well, yes, Vincent, this Compact for Africa stems from the African nations themselves, their wish for the Agenda 2063 to make sure that there's this overriding sustainable approach to investment, job creation, and making part of that commitment is ensuring that Germany is on board. And there's 7 African nations who've signed up to this compact with Africa. So it's not the compact for Africa, but Africa is a key partner in its own future. And we see the IMF is also part of this, as well as the African Development Bank and the World Bank, as well as another key party to this compact.
Sounds fascinating. One of the issues that has been on the news like for the last few years is the flow of migrants and refugees to Europe. What has been discussed? What is the plan?
Well, yes, one of the core flaws of the current model between the EU and the G20 in dealing with Africa is just throwing money at Africa. And now there's had to be a rethink, and this is what Merkel has emphasized, in order to make sure that these refugees and migrants aren't leaving the continent, that there's not this brain drain of young people, that the economy and development needs to be stimulated sustainably back at home, and to encourage young people to stay, and that their prospects for employment are high, and that they don't need to leave because they feel that they've got no future.
Mm-hmm. Now, very quickly, the issue of gender equality was also on the table. What has been discussed up to this point?
Well, this is something that Merkel herself is very committed to, and it's a personal project for her, as well as being part of the G20. So part of the gender equality pillar is to ensure that through stimulating digital economy and initiatives for women and young girls to be able to take part in the digital economy and the startup ecosystem, making sure that they are going to be able to contribute equally, and through these mechanisms try to stem that tide of discrimination and ensure that there's full chances that the human capital is really being developed.
Petra, thank you. Danke schön. Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
All right, that's Petra Zlatevska. She is a Berlin-based journalist coming to us live. Now, in less than 2 hours, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions testifies in open session before the Senate committee investigating alleged ties between Donald Trump's presidential campaign and Kremlin election interference. Now, VOA White House correspondent Peter Heinlein reports that Sessions wants to explain why he recused himself from the collusion probe, but senators have other questions.
Sessions, himself a senator for 20 years, volunteered to appear before the Intelligence Committee after former FBI Director James Comey hinted to senators last week that there may have been more than meets the eye to the Attorney General's decision to step away from supervising the Russia probe.
Was that he was very close to and inevitably going to recuse himself for a variety of reasons. We also were aware of facts that I can't discuss in an open setting that would make his continued engagement in a Russia-related investigation problematic.
Sessions stepped back from supervising the probe in March after it was revealed he had several meetings with Moscow's ambassador to Washington during the presidential campaign. His appearance before the Intelligence Committee, however, opens him to a host of other questions about alleged collusion between Trump associates and Russia, as well as his role in Comey's firing at a time the FBI director was leading the Russia investigation. Senator Chris Van Hollen told VOA lawmakers want to know if there was any attempt to stall the investigation.
Every American should be troubled by the fact that the president, crossed that line where political interference in an ongoing investigation was front and center.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer Monday said only that the president is aware Sessions will testify and that he looks forward to being done with the Russia probe, which has been a distraction.
The president's been clear last week in the Rose Garden that he believes that the sooner we can get this addressed and dealt with, that there's been no collusion. He wants this to get investigated as soon as possible and be done with it so he can continue with the business of the American people.
Trump used Twitter to brand Comey's testimony false statements and lies, and to claim complete vindication. He told reporters he would be 100% willing to testify under oath about his private conversations with Comey, which have become an issue in the investigation. Peter Heinlein, VOA News, the White House.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Well, coming up, empowering citizens to combat HIV. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon Beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
Well, it's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lena Madu, who in just a few moments will have the latest on HIV self-testing kits.
That's right, Vincent. But first, people may be more likely to pile vegetables on their plates when these dishes are served up with fancy names. Researchers at Stanford University in California experimented with randomly naming identical vegetable dishes in one of 4 ways: a basic description with plain names, a label stressing a lack of unhealthy components, a tag identifying positive health properties like lots of vitamins, or an indulgent name designed to make the dish sound delicious and intriguing, like dynamite, chili, and tangy lime seasoned beets. How about that? More dinners chose the fancy named items. The healthy sounding labels were the least popular. The researchers tested the idea as a way to improve eating habits and make a dent in the growing obesity epidemic. The results were published in the Journal of the American Medical Association magazine. Now, Kenya is the latest African country to introduce HIV self-testing kits in a bid to get more people to know their status and seek treatment. The government estimates that there are as many as 500,000 people in Kenya who are HIV positive but don't know it. Lenny Ruvaga reports from Nairobi.
25-year-old Lucy Wanjiku heard about the new HIV self-testing kit and has decided to try it out. The kits went on sale at private pharmacies in Kenya in May. The pharmacist first explains the test, the possible outcomes, and information about public hospital referrals before administering it. According to Wanjiku, the self-testing kit will help reduce stigma.
Because it's at your privacy, no one will see it. Don't think there's much stigma to that. And also, like the pharmacist didn't get to see my results, so they don't even know if it's positive or it's negative. That is my secret to my heart.
There are 2 variations of the self-testing kit, the oral swab and the blood test. The blood sample kit contains 3 bottles, which accelerate the disintegration of blood. It also has a test device pouch and a lancet to draw blood. The blood sample test is sold for about $8, while the oral swab retails at $9. The government has trained pharmacy practitioners like Dr. Miriam Mugure to administer the tests.
It's a very good initiative. We thank the government for such a thing. But I think the price, it's a bit costly. As much as I'm going to carry it home. So if they can reduce the pricing so that everyone can access it.
Esther Chude is the CEO at the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, PSK, which has partnered with the government to roll out the self-testing kits.
Our challenges have been twofold. One is pricing. It being in the early stages, we do not have the volumes, therefore the price is prohibitive to a majority of the people. Secondly, we need to be able to get the message out there, and we're working with partners to inform the public.
The Ministry of Health says as many as a quarter of Kenyans infected with HIV don't know their status.
The main reason for introducing HIV self-testing is to reach this unreached population, mainly men and young people.
The government hopes to roll out the HIV self-testing kits in public hospitals later this year. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Nairobi.
People living with HIV/AIDS are faced with challenges such as staying healthy and affording the cost of treatment. But organizations like the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation and some government-funded programs enable patients with limited or no financial resources access to the care they need. Josephine Abu Kenya is one such patient. She was born with HIV/AIDS in Uganda in 1994 and is now not only a healthy adult, but also an advocate for children living with HIV/AIDS. She's also an ambassador for the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. Josephine, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you here.
Yeah.
First of all, let me ask you, what has been your experience like living with HIV/AIDS in Uganda, growing up with the virus?
First and foremost, like many children or adolescents or youth living with HIV, I contracted the virus through my mother during her pregnancy. And from the very beginning, I never knew my status until I was 10 years old. So I read a letter I was never supposed to read, and it disclosed my family status. But after a very short time of 2 years, my mother disclosed to me, and I also had to disclose to her that I read the letter and I kept it a secret. I never told anyone that I read the letter. So we had to seek medication, of course, at a hospital known as Makerere University John Hopkins Research Collaboration, Muju in Kampala, and that's where we're introduced to the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. My mother kept it a secret for the very first time, not to disclose to me, because she was protecting me and my family from the stigma and discrimination that did exist in Uganda by that time.
And stigma is indeed a tough challenge that people living with HIV are faced with every day. What has been your experience? Do you think that things have improved?
Well, of course, whenever you talk about HIV, you cannot forget stigma or
Absolutely.
discrimination.
Yes.
So, and personally, I've experienced discrimination at school after, because I always share my life experience openly in media and to different conferences. And so children have learned about my status. And at one point, I did experience discrimination at school. But there's been slowly, it's a gradual process, and there's been improvement. It's not like the way it used to be way back in 2000, in the early 2000s. So there's been a slowly improvement, and that is attributed to the different outreaches that different organizations have been able to do. Personally, I do school and community outreach, yes. And we do this to give out right information about HIV and AIDS, and in the community outreach, we spice it up with testing services.
Now, let me ask you this question. I just wanted to have your take on how the youth react to your messages as an ambassador, because you, as you say, you do the outreach in communities. What is the reaction, especially, particularly with regards to the youth?
Well, they do listen to me because I'm a fellow youth. So that's the one thing. They will see me and they'll be like, oh, she's like us. Okay. In our age mate. So they do listen to me, and sometimes they need more knowledge and more scientific knowledge. So whenever even us youths go out to the community and do the sensitization, we have other healthy workers behind us. Okay. So in case there is anything, like maybe they think maybe they need more clarity from an older person, they'll always be there. But I've always had a great experience because they do listen to me since I'm a fellow youth.
Now, you're in Washington for your advocacy work, and in particular, to talk about what could be a human cost of a potential budget cut to HIV/AIDS research and programming. Tell us about this. Obviously, it's very important to you. What is the message? Who are you talking to, and your hopes?
Well, we've come so far in the fight against HIV and AIDS. And personally, I would not be speaking to you right now, or maybe I would not be this healthy and I would not have achieved whatever success I've achieved in life if I didn't get the treatment and the support that I did get way back when I was growing up from different organizations like the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation and other organizations. And all these organizations are funded through the US government. So I would say that without the support that I did get, and I would not be the person I am today. And you know, sometimes you just see figures, but there are people behind those figures.
Absolutely.
And right now in the fight against HIV and AIDS, we are really looking towards ending HIV and AIDS in 2030. So we would not wish to have any single dollar or any single shilling or amount cut from the budget, because we are targeted to ending it in 2030. We would love to see more money put into the programs in order to achieve the goal.
So quickly, before we wrap, what are your hopes?
Well, as a youth living with HIV, I would not wish it to any other person. So my hope is to end HIV and AIDS in children. That will be my first goal, in children, to ensure that there is elimination of mother-to-child transmission, and to all children born with HIV to ensure that they are started on treatment. If we have that set in place, we will have a free generation coming on.
Josephine, you're such a brilliant and beautiful voice and a powerful voice indeed. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And that was Josephine Abu Kenya. She is an advocate for children living with HIV/AIDS with the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, Lenore, thank you very much. Now be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, Impact Hub has been getting a lot of attention lately in the tech world, and for a good reason. Now, the hub has co-working space in more than 100 cities worldwide, and it's changing the way members and social change entrepreneurs interested in solving everyday problems see their startups kick off. Africa 54's Paul Diho has more.
I'll just add my own experience. So,
Located in the heart of Washington, D.C., Impact Hub is a membership community of entrepreneurs, activists, creatives, and professionals taking action to drive positive social, economic, and environmental change. Jen Baker runs Impact Hub here in Washington, D.C. metro area.
Impact Hub is the only one in D.C. We are a collective of social innovators and entrepreneurs who are accelerating. We help to accelerate their business. So on a daily basis, we focus on mission-driven organizations. Could be anything from mass incarceration, clean water issues, sexual violence, globalization, anything that has to do with making the world a better place.
Unlike a tech incubator or accelerator, Impact Hub does not take equity in members, but provides a workspace, business advice, workshops, and networking opportunities for the local and global community of change agents. Hundreds of participants meet here regularly with investors to network, to discuss opportunities and challenges. Having worked at other tech firms, Baker appreciates the built-in community at Impact Hub and says it keeps her motivated.
What makes me jump out of bed in the morning? I'm excited to be here. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I do work 12 to 14 hours a day, but it's, you know the old adage, if you love what you do, it's not work. Every day I get to work with very, very awesome people who are fulfilling their dreams, and I get to see that on a daily basis. So I love coming here. This is family for me.
For all the work required to launch a business, building a network and fostering relationships in the tech community is equally important. Baker says Impact Hub DC strengthens their resolve to achieve higher social standards and empowers others in the community to do the same.
We wouldn't work with people who do not align with our values, which are authenticity, integrity, and other things like that. So we want to make sure that we wouldn't invite somebody here who's working on hate crimes, or you have to be doing good in the world.
Analysts say what started in 2005 as a gathering place for impact pioneers in London has grown to be a community of more than 1,500 professional members and more than 100 physical spaces worldwide. But despite the success, the hub in DC is not without its challenges.
As being a woman of color, I do go up against a lot of times when I'm looking for funding sources. You know, there's like the old boys club. A lot of times people fund the people who they know and who look like them. So a lot of times I'm fighting to get funding for Impact Hub DC. But it takes a lot of compassion and empathy, which is something that I know that's one of my superpowers. I know that by working with entrepreneurs and having compassion and empathy, I'm able to put myself in their shoes because I know what they're going through being an entrepreneur myself.
From San Francisco to Singapore, Johannesburg to Madrid, and dozens of other cities across the globe, this growing community utilizes the power of entrepreneurship, collaboration, and network effects to generate and advance innovative approaches to global social change. Paul Diho, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Who's the top earning entertainer of 2017? Now, the answer may surprise you. We'll be right back.
If you you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Kenya, 5 people are feared trapped after a 7-story building collapses in a residential area of the capital, Nairobi. In Uganda, a group of farmers head out to fish in Lake Ramunga to support Congolese refugees fleeing violence. In South Africa, protesters torch trains and smash windows at Cape Town's Central Train Station in frustration over delayed travel services. Finally, residents of Libya's second city, Benghazi, gave mixed reactions to the release of Saif al-Islam, the son of the late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Sean Diddy Combs is the top earner on Forbes' list of the 100 highest paid celebrities. The magazine says the artist, formerly known as Puff Daddy, raked in $130 million from June 1st, 2016 to June 1st, 2017. Forbes says Diddy's Bad Boy Family Reunion Tour is taking Chiruk vodka and the $70 million sale of 1/3 of his Sean John clothing line all contributed to his earnings. Number 2 on the list is Beyonce with $105 million in earnings. Next up, these kids are joining the ranks of Australia's Citizen Scientist Trend. The online app they're using aims to make science fun while adding to a national database of Australian species. The keen animal spotters take and upload photos. They also identify their finds and those made by others. The Australian Museum says there has always been interest in citizen science, but leaps in technology have made it easy for people to get involved, especially kids. Last year, one of the 50,000 people that took part in the national online project called Wildlife Spotter, more than 3/4 of them were children. Well, and finally, a decade ago, cryotherapy rooms were only to be found in professional sports clubs and exclusive health clinics. Now you can order one like a pizza. This one, according to a Cryopod, is used by a string of Premiership football clubs and English League rugby teams. Originally developed as a way to alleviate symptoms of multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis, whole body cryotherapy has been attributed with the ability to speed muscle and tissue recovery. Much of the evidence has been anecdotal. Oxygen tanks are now also mobile. This model on display claims to be lightweight and comes apart in 3 pieces for easy transportation. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and then in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When something loses its original shape or form, it does not look very natural or comfortable.
Bent out of shape.
Hey, did you tell Greg about my dinner party?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was invited.
Well, now he's all bent out of shape because I didn't invite him.
I'm sorry.